Welcome back to my channel to all my subscribers, and those who are new to my channel, welcome. Today I am with Kunal, who's my partner. So he actually helped me finding a house in Australia. I was completely new and he had lived in Australia for quite a bit. So he actually helped me look for houses near my workplace which were like under our budget range. So yeah, let's get started. Welcome. Today I'll be talking you guys through on how to get a house in Australia, in Sydney, and then what are the steps we took and how did we finally get a house despite not having a rental agreement here in Australia. Firstly, you need to understand what are you looking for. Here in Australia, since I was going to stay with Kunal, I looked for a 2 BHK apartment which was big enough for both of us. But you can figure out what you want to do with the amount of money that you have, and based on your budget you can either look for shared apartments, you can look for a 2 BHK, 1 BHK, or have a shared house, or maybe do a house sitting thing here in Australia.
So actually I'm a student here, so I've lived for the longest time, and Australia is quite easy to get an apartment if you plan it well in advance. So firstly, you would like to go to rental properties websites, something like if you are traveling alone and you are a student here, or if you are working alone here, you would want to not invest in an apartment solely because it's quite expensive to rent an apartment for particularly one person. You would like to go into house sharing, and house sharing is something that comes really handy for people who do not really know that what kind of suburb they want to live in initially. So initially it's a better idea to stay in a house sharing, so when you'll get to know different suburbs which are near your workplace or your university, which later on you can actually invest in a good rental property.
And this is also basically a cheaper option for students who come in on a student visa. And
definitely students visa holders and even work visa holders, like people who are staying alone and prefer to go on rental property, house sharing properties, because it gives you a more firstly that sickness feeling is not there when you're sharing an apartment. Because when I shifted to Australia, I was staying in Tasmania. I used to stay in Launceston, and I shared an apartment with 3 other guys from India, and to be honest, it was much cheaper and much more practical to do that, because we were all studying in the same university. We were all sharing our food expenses as well. But if you have a partner alongside you, then you want your privacy, then definitely you would want to go for a single unit and double occupancy apartments, but not particularly if you are a single person coming to Australia and not having this restrictions on you. So definitely finding a house in a house sharing is easier. Like you can go on websites called flatmates.com, houseshare.com. These are some websites, and even Gumtree and Facebook do advertise them regularly. And if you are part of some communities like on Facebook, like Indians living in Sydney or Indians living in any other part of the country, if you just search them by groups on Facebook, you'll come to see that there are a lot of properties being advertised for house sharing, and the rent is reasonable, usually like $100 to $200 a week, including electricity and water. In the prime areas, water is free. Electricity, sometimes when you are sharing the house owner will actually rent you out including the electricity bill. If not, it's a quarterly thing that you have to pay to the house owner and it's shared by all the tenants, so it's not on per units or something. It's actually shared amongst all the tenants. So firstly, it's for house sharing. Then secondly, when Shweta came to Australia, she needed an apartment in Sydney. Now when you're moving to a metropolitan and you're arriving first time from India, you require a reference check. So because the real estate representatives have a lot of applications, they like have 200 or 300
Yeah,
applicants.
when we were looking a property around Sydney CBD area and maybe suburb area as well, there were literally 20 to 30 applicants alongside me looking at the apartment at a single time. So yeah, apartment hunting can be a crucial and a painstaking task if you like start from scratch. I literally had zero references when I came to Australia, as I did not know anyone. Kunal was one of my references, and a couple of his friends were my references, and also my HR from my office. Those were the only references I have. But when you're starting out, it's relatively required for you to have these references so that you make your application here stronger. Now, as Kunal mentioned, you don't really need references when you're sharing a house or when you're applying for a house in flatmates.com. But when you individually taking a house, say a 1 BHK or a 2 BHK, and you are individually contributing to the rent, then you do need a reference check, as they require someone to actually say that you will be able to manage the rent. For me, since I did not have a reference check, I gave in my offer letter and my salary slips, which literally helped them understand that I'm working here in Australia and I can pay my house rent on a monthly basis. Now, house rent here in Australia can be on a monthly, bi-weekly or a weekly basis, depending on how you decided with your landlord or your consultant, real estate consultant, or the consultant that you're working with. I went ahead, in the beginning I went ahead with a bi-weekly payment of rent, but then I made sure that the payment went monthly, because it's like a little bit easier to like schedule that payment with your bank. Now, when you're starting to look for a house, you want to look for a house near maybe your workplace, and also if you're coming with a family, you need to see the surrounding areas and figure out like what schools are available, what facilities are available within the building, what parks that you can go to are available near to your house. So
and the most important, I believe, is the supermarkets.
Yeah.
Because you don't want a supermarket to be really far away from your house, because initially you will not have any vehicle, and taxis are relatively expensive if you book them, so it's better if you find a house near the supermarket, because it always helps you. It always helps you to go and just grab something if you need it urgently. So
yeah, we talked about location. Let's talk about furnishings. So you can either go for a fully furnished house, a semi-furnished house, or a non-furnished house. We went ahead with a non-furnished house because actually we liked the locality, and this was the only house that was available to us that we really liked. So we went ahead with a non-furnished house. When you're coming to Australia, I would advise you to go for a fully furnished house. That was the mistake that we made, because we had to literally furnish fridge, microwave, washing machine, bed, everything by ourselves, which was a little taxing. But yeah, if you get an opportunity and if you like a fully furnished house, I would advise you to please go and grab that house. Now, when it comes to selecting a house, you really want to make sure that you talk to your landlords about what are the facilities that are available within the building. For example, in our building, we do have a swimming pool available, which was really what we both wanted, because we both are quite close to water and we like swimming, and hence we went for an apartment like that. I went ahead with some of the apartments which have gym facilities within the apartment. We literally do not have that, but some apartments did have gym facilities, but the rent was skyrocketing. The rent really ranges from, for a 2 BHK, rent really ranges from around 600 to say 850, depending on what the locality is, what are you looking for in a house, and again, what is your budget. So the main websites that we went ahead and made our profile was real-estate and domain.com. These were the two major sites.
Yeah, so we actually saw these apartments because first one was fully furnished, but the thing was it was not very much to my liking. I liked it, had a great view though. We could see the harbor bridge from there, But to be honest, the apartment looked really cramped to us, and it was over flooded with things. And as we were not looking for something, and Shweta has got a 2 years visa for working with an organization here in Australia. So we were actually looking for something that is going to stay with us long time. And the thing is, if you go for a fully furnished apartment, there are some problems that can affect us, which are that if anything stops working, the landlord will put it on your bill. He will say that it was functioning when he gave it to you, especially like refrigerators and other things. Like it has already happened to me down in Tasmania, that we had a refrigerator in our house which suddenly stopped working, and we had to purchase a new refrigerator which we cannot even take by ourselves to the next place we move in, because the landlord simply said that when I gave you the things, it was in working order, and now it's not working, so that means you must have done something. So I was actually looking for an unfurnished apartment, so where we can buy new electronics, because you are actually paying a little bit more for a fully furnished apartment here in Sydney. And if you look at this time span of a year, you will eventually save on the money if you furnish the apartment yourself, and you can move or relocate with all your belongings to another place also, and you can resell it if you don't want to carry them, instead of going for a fully furnished apartment. Yes, it's amazing for a person who does not want to invest anything into their house, just want to come in and sleep and just use it, and does not feel like decorating, and does not have an idea of how to decorate their own houses. It's very practical for them to go for a fully furnished or a semi-furnished apartment. But for a person who wants to indulge into creating a new space around him, I would advise that not to go for a fully furnished apartment, rather furnish that apartment yourself, because at the end of the day you'll be saving a lot of money on that portion of rent which you're paying for just using those facilities which you can't even resell again. So that was our idea. We went for this apartment, plus it had a gorgeous view by the bayside, as you can see, and a lot of we're next to a harbour club here in Sydney, in Kirribilli. So it was a sight that took my breath away, literally. And when I came looking to this apartment, Shweta was the person who had to do the initial inspection, but she could not because her job required her to be present at her work in her office. And that is one of the reasons why I say that you should start looking for apartments earlier, once before you arrive, because once you're finally going to reach Australian shores, you won't get time to go and particularly see each and every property. It was my university vacations at that point of time, so I had taken a break and leave of absence from my university down in Tasmania to visit Sydney and to help Shweta settle down here. So I was inspecting apartments in place of her. I think I got selected for this apartment was firstly, your appearance does matter. I would say that whenever you're going for an apartment hunting, do not go wearing jeans and t-shirt. You should be smartly dressed up. Because secondly is you need to be very confident in knowing what you are looking at, because I was alongside another gentleman who inspected the property alongside with me, and he questions that even the real estate agent pointed out that did you not go through the details I had sent you on your email before you could view the property? And this came into my favor because I just inspected the property and I did not ask her a lot of questions, just some simple question like, is a parking space available, what about the parking space, everything. That's all. It's a basic question, not a lot of questions. Nothing you should not ask particularly questions that are prominently visible to you, like if there's not a refrigerator, you can ask them why, that is the refrigerator included or not, are they going to provide. But if they say no, that's it. You should not go into details, because once you go into details, you are not prioritized because you are asking too many questions, and that's not the way they have other people who do not are not inquiring so much, and they find that more appealing.
Yeah, that is one of the points. I think the way Australians work is basically they send you the entire details of the house and they call you for an inspection. Once you have the details of the house, they expect you to go through that and then ask them questions which are not included in that detailed description of the house, or what is not included in the already mentioned details that they've provided you previously. So yeah, when it comes to like asking too many questions or being too inquisitive about the house, I would say avoid that, because that is one of the reasons why they send you the descriptions, because they want to avoid all of these relevant but important questions. And hence, like, if you go and ask them why is the refrigerator not available, you can ask them prior to the inspection, as there are a lot of people around you who will be inspecting the property alongside you, so they cannot really put stress on just entertaining you.
Secondly, is that be on time, because if
Yeah.
you are given a time slot here, and if you don't respect that, you are not going to get that property. If you are getting late, you must give them a ring prior to arriving that I am stuck in traffic or I am caught up at work and I will not be able to make it at this time. You should have them informed prior, not when they have reached and out of courtesy they are calling you. Because once they are calling you, and if you're not picking up their call, just trying to avoid their calls because you are late, they will already prioritize the next applicant in that process. They will not give you the chance to come up and see, unless you inform them prior that yes, I will be late and I will not be available at this time, so can we reschedule. Asking them these things can make your application a better thing. I believe that if you are trying to hold an apartment for the first time and trying to get an apartment for the first time, it's better that you don't believe what the real estate agents will make you say, at times, because sometimes some real estate agent, like one of our real estate agent, he wanted to get us a property in Parramatta. He wanted us to take that property, and he even advised, I don't know, it was an advice or was he trying to warn us, saying that we won't be able to get any property in a prime locality as we do not have any rental history in Sydney. But I would say do not believe such things, and please try, because you don't know what you might end up with. Because everyone is trying, every of these property real estate agents are trying to push their properties so that they can earn a living and commissions. But it's your job to go and thoroughly inspect the property until you are satisfied, and keep applying for all the properties you like. Don't go on people's words, like when they say that this is the place where you can first find a house, and then maybe once you make a rental history with them, that's when you will be able to move to a prime location. I would say no, because we inspected all the properties here in North Sydney and they were really high-end properties.
Yeah.
High-end properties, and we actually got call back from a few.
Yeah.
Even though we did not have any rental histories, it's just like, how do you create that first impression amongst them? And it would be advised that if you can be available during the inspection hours and not ask them that can you come into late time to inspect the property, because here real estate agents work from 9 to 5 mostly, and they expect you to come and inspect the property. And if you do not have time, you can always request for a video inspection. I think they do that as well.
Yeah, I think most of the times I was not available and I requested them for a video inspection. Few of them were completely against it and they said no, but a lot of them were quite helpful in that sense. A few of the real estate agents that I met with really liked my profile, and really liked my application, and they were happy to do a video inspection with me being on the video, and them taking through the house. But yeah, we do not, when he says that, do not ever underestimate yourself and your application. You will be forced and you will be obviously like pushed to take rental listings that you do not really like, but there is no other thing available in the market for you. We were lucky enough, we didn't fall for that, because we had obviously my company sponsored my hotel stay for 1 month, so we had an entire month to look for an apartment. But if you're really in an urgent scenario, do not give in to that. I would say keep looking for properties and you will surely find the one that you love, because
Definitely.
it's you who has to live, nobody else. If you are frustrated in the property, you will never be happy, and at the end we do not want that. Everyone needs to be happy and everyone should be like enjoying the house that they live in.
Exactly, and the next thing is that prior to inspection, please ask, because once we moved into our apartment, we also faced some discrepancies. Like we had a clogged drain, and our drain was really clogged. We did not come to know that it's the kind of wash basin it is, or it's a clogged drain. And getting a plumbing done in the apartment is really a hassle, and plumbing is really expensive here in Sydney. So please ask your real estate representative about all these things, and especially about the infestations.
Yeah,
Because
we will talk
facing-
about the problems later on. Today we'll just speak about like how did we find a property, but you will find a lot of problems once you do finalize a house. I would recommend ask all the questions related to the house as much as possible. For example, was there a pest infestation done? When was the last fire alarm inspection done? When was the house cleaning done? When was the fumigation done in the house? All of these questions are really important, which we did not ask because we did not think to. I am a first time renter, and Kunal is himself a first time renter. We have never rented a property by ourselves, so we did not even think to ask these questions. But do ask all of these questions as in when you start living in the apartment. Now, documentation, that is the most important part of your application. When I was filing out for my application, I had filed an application in realestate.com and domain.com. Now, real estate is really rigid and strict with your application. There is a point system, and you are required to complete those points within the real estate website before you start applying for these houses on their website. We found this house through realestate.com, so I would really recommend as to like finish your application as soon as possible and start applying or start applying for houses here on real estate. Now, when it comes to documentation, all your personal details will be required in that real estate form, alongside your job description, not really job description, but where you work, and basically your salary and compensation details. Those will be required. If you have any references, those will be required as well. Your driver's license, your passport, all of these ID checks will be done by realestate.com. So make sure your profile on all of these websites is complete at 100%, and make sure you do meet all the point system that they require. Now, most of the real estate people, most of the consultants that I spoke to had my application from real estate, but there were a few properties which required a form filling individually, so we went ahead and filled that form as well. In this scenario where you do not have the rental history, please be very vocal about it to the consultant, and please tell them that since you're new here, you do not have a rental history. They will ask you for a reference check. You will need 2 reference checks for saying that you are a regular employer, or you are a regular employee at a workplace, or maybe someone you basically know and you're a good person and that you do not create any nuisances. That reference check will be required. Alongside, for me specifically, they asked me my visa details as well. to see that if I'm eligible to stay here in Australia for the amount that the duration that I'm renting the house, as well as my compensation benefits from my current employer to make sure that I am able to pay the rent since I did not have the rental history. So those were the documents that were required on the real estate website and from the real estate consultant. Do reach out to me if you need help or if you have any questions when it comes to real estate website or forms that you want to fill. I'll be able to guide you through as much as I can or through my own process. But yeah, that is one thing that I really made sure that I finished before applying for houses in Australia. Now, what is left now?
I think deciding that you should go for a house with the parking or not.
Oh yes.
That is
so
one of the important things.
If you are in Australia, first of all, you would need to consider buying a vehicle. Vehicles here in Australia are pretty cheap. Like a hatchback will cost you from anywhere $2,000 to $4,000. Depending on the year that they buy in. I've seen hatchbacks hatchbacks dating back to 1997 and cars dating back to 1998 here in Australia, which is amazing. We both love old cars, so yeah, we really find that pretty exciting. But yeah, when you look for a house, always ask if they have a parking space. If today, not tomorrow, if you do plan to buy a car, it'll be great that you have a parking space or an off-street parking besides your house. Otherwise, that is going to be a hassle because parking here in Australia is super expensive. It is basically like $30 per hour on some sites and then $20 per hour on the other side. But it ranges from $10 to $30 per hour for parking here in Australia.
And do ask the real estate representative that if there is no on-street or private parking available, is there a nearby parking place where a parking available where you can park your cars for a long-term basis? Because there are not all localities which do have parking spaces with them, because there are apartment complexes here which do not have on the main street, which do not have parking on street as well as private parking, but they do provide at a concession rate these yearly subscription to Wilson parking spots as well, where you can park your cars which are nearby to your house, just like a 1 minute or 2 minutes walk from your house maximum. But yes, parking is one of the most important things that is required when you're apartment hunting, because eventually everyone plans to buy a vehicle in Australia. Things are not very close by, everything is a little far. I believe that. Also, ask about the garbage bins as well. Sometimes the garbage bins are not pointed to you, and you have to look up for it that they are specially marked for your apartment.
Also, when it comes to garbages, here in Australia, the garbage is separated based on the type of garbage, whether it's recyclable or whether it's just rubbish or whether it just has to be fumigated. So depending on the type of garbage that you have, you need to segregate your garbages from yellow color to red color to green color. You can find all of these on any Australian or government platform. But yeah, that's one thing that is different from India for sure.
Yes, that is.
And the last thing we wanted to talk about was different localities or different areas that you can look for when you are in Sydney. We went for Kirribilli area because I thought this was the safest area and I had to stay alone for a couple of months. So I thought like living next to the Prime Minister or living close by to the Prime Minister's house would be the best place and the safest place to stay in Sydney. Although Sydney is by itself a very safe city, but you never know. I came from Delhi, so I had that stigma within me that I need to be in a safe space. I've heard, we were looking at Parramatta as one of those localities, but I've heard and read bad things about Parramatta. Bad things in the sense that there are like cops in and around the city during and after hours, and there have been cases where people are stealing things from the supermarkets, which which is anywhere not where I wanted to be in a scenario like that. So yeah.
Plus, the area is Australia has this issue with illicit drugs abuse as well, which is a little bit concern in Parramatta suburb. And it was not here, and because Shweta was staying alone for a few months, we decided that this would be the prime property which we should go for, even though we were not selected for it in the first place, but we did eventually get this apartment.
So yeah, we were looking for properties near North Sydney.
Yes.
And Kirribilli, Milsons Point, Kirribilli, sort of the Bradfield Park area. You can also look for properties in Zetland. You will find amazing places in Zetland. This is the point where I first time went to a drag queen bingo night. That was an amazing night. So Zetland is one of the properties that you should definitely see alongside Randwick and Epping. All of these areas,
Even Chatwoods,
even Chatwoods, yes, even St. Leonard's. These are the properties near Sydney CBD and the North Sydney area, and you would find the rentals also pretty reasonable in these areas. North Sydney and Kirribilli are on the expensive side, while Zetland and Randwick are also still similar to North Sydney on the expensive side. But as and when you go to the suburbs or far away from North Sydney and CBD, you will find that places are cheaper. Although the place where we were looking at places, that place was also not as cheap as people were saying. People were saying that Parramatta there are houses available with $300 per week rent, but that was not the case. We were still given $700 per week as a rental in Parramatta, which we did not go for because we found a better property.
I think getting an apartment near your workplace is very important, because initially you will not be having an access to your own personal transport, and you will be spending a lot of money commuting by taxis. If you are in a far locality, especially if your apartment is an hour away from your workplace, you will be either have to take a train, which are usually not on time. In Sydney, yes, there are major delays that you can experience in trains, and you would not want to be late for your work in the first few days at least. So definitely getting an apartment near your workplace would be suggested.
If you look for Uber and taxis here, those are super expensive. I live around 2 kilometers from my workplace, and it takes around $14 every day one way to actually for me to actually go to my workplace. So yeah, Ubers are very expensive.
And plus, finding an apartment near a train station is also an ideal way to look for an apartment initially, because train station and bus stations are going to be your only mode of transport if you are on a budget. If you do not have this budget restraints and constraints, then definitely an Uber would work well for you until you get yourself a vehicle. So Uber will sustain your living. And
Alright, I think this is all we had for you guys. I hope you do get an apartment in case you're searching for, and for those who are planning to come to Australia, welcome, and do let us know if we can help you in some way or the other. We are always here. I would always be available on YouTube, and replying to your comments as and when you have any questions for me. Well, thank you for watching this video, and thank you for subscribing to it if you have, and if you've not yet, please subscribe to my channel and say hi to Kunal. Bye guys.